We're here in the heart of Silicon Valley, and with us someone who's an aerospace engineer, has worked with GE, with AWS, Intel, and now is the founder of Articul8, a very exciting and interesting company, but AI company that's working at the intersection of deep tech and AI, building what we call domain-specific models. Arun, such a pleasure to have you with us here. Tell us all about what these domain-specific models are.
Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for taking the time and thanks for the opportunity. And you said it really well. It's actually right at the intersection of deep tech and large-scale AI. And what we call domain-specific models are models that understand deeply technical domains from the perspective of experts, not necessarily just generalists, right? And the reason they are needed is, general purpose models have now become much more efficient and much more capable. They get you maybe 70-80% of the way, maybe sometimes even 90% of the way. We exist for the last 10%.
Explain to us why the development of domain-specific models is different from LLMs. Would these be called SLMs, the small language models, and how there is a real use case and market out there?
So there's a general misconception that domain-specific models are SLMs, right?
Right.
I think that there's an overlap, but they're not the same. And the reason for that is small versus large, first of all, keeps changing. What used to be large is now small, and it keeps changing. But typically, today's definition, anything below maybe a 30 billion parameter model becomes a small language model. Anything legitimately above a 100 billion parameter model is no longer a small language model, right?
Yes.
And the frontier models are already at a trillion parameters and above. That's really where the frontier models are. Domain-specific models that we build are typically between 100 to 200 billion parameters. Sometimes they're also 8 billion parameter models. And the reason for that is...
And which is why it's not right to call them small, because they could be large, but they're domain specific.
Exactly. Yeah. And the size of the model is dictated by how much data you have and what is the use case. If your use case is narrow, you really don't want a large model because you're wasting a lot of resources.
Right. So I think it's a use case definition that is deciding the difference between an SLM and an LLM. But now let's talk use cases, because yes, the use case of an LLM or a frontier model is evident, but it's, of course, a lot of it is being questioned in terms of the kind of investments that's going in, the ROI. There's a lot of question around enterprise adoption. So we'll park that and come to all of that later. But first, to talk about what Articul8 is doing. This is real domain use case by very specialized enterprises. Give us a very simple example on how this is playing out in the real world.
Absolutely. First of all, as Articul8, our main function is to deliver an agentic OS into a domain-specific enterprise. And the reason I say that is we build a lot of models. Models are a means to an end. We don't sell models. We actually sell the full platform, or we
an
sell
operating system in which there are multiple models.
Multiple models.
Right.
And by design, every single deployment we do is multiple models working together. That's one. But you asked for an example, right? So a common example is what I would call a expert assistant. And I'm using those words very carefully because it's not a co-pilot. It's not let's just go turn on a system and forget about it. It's definitely an expert or a domain practitioner, I would put it that way, who is working on the core business operation of a company which is doing manufacturing or design or semiconductors or any of those kinds of domains. And it's an assistant that understands their domain, it understands the context, and it legitimately offloads a significant portion of the heavy lifting that a practitioner would do.
So basically, once you have trained these models and these domain-specific models have that domain-specific data, today perhaps that job of an assistant, which was earlier being done by a human, is now being replaced by this OS, so to say, this entire operating system that you're putting in place, which has several models, but that are talking to each other to enable a very sophisticated assistant.
Yes, and I would say rather than replacing the human being, it actually supercharges the human being. And the reason for that is every domain we operate in, whether it is aerospace, automotive, semiconductor manufacturing, the number of technical experts you can get from the field are very limited.
Yeah.
And so it's not like you're going to replace them, you're actually turbocharging them, because today if they're spending 80-90% of their time on work that they could potentially offload, but there is nobody to offload. That's what our system does. That's number one. And the second one is you have to do it with a specificity and accuracy level that's much better than what a general purpose model can do. I'll give you a simple example that may seem trivial, but it's a very hard computer science
Sure.
problem. You have tables,
Yeah.
and in PDFs, in Word documents, PowerPoints, whatever they may be, you give it to a large model and say, extract all the information from the table.
Right.
9 out of 10 times it'll do a great job.
Yeah.
One
But
time,
the one time-
it'll make a mistake. And the systems we are operating in, that one time is not acceptable. You
Because
need 5 nines of repeatability. You need
Right.
5 nines of accuracy. That's the system that is, you cannot afford to make that one-time mistake.
and which is what differentiates your models from, say, because the use case would not allow those mistakes to happen, because I mean, then the whole purpose fails.
Yes, yes.
Let's talk a little more about what we're seeing happen on parallelly on both fronts. I think everyone's talking about deep tech, and deep tech is a catch-all phrase. Both here, we're going to be at the SF Deep Tech Week. There's a lot of conversation around things changing around robotics, around space tech, drones. There's just so much innovation that's coming out. A lot of that also happening in India.
Yeah.
And I think the point that we're now seeing is that AI is enabling deep tech in a way that it hadn't earlier. So tell us about that, because since you sit at the intersection of deep tech and AI, tell us a little more about how the two are fueling each other.
So think about, and like say,
Because I would not classify AI as classic deep tech. Deep tech are those specialized domains, but AI is an enabler.
Totally. And it's an enabler in a way where the common conversation we have with customers from deep tech is, think of a problem that you think is impossible today. Not hard to do, impossible today. Let's have a conversation about that. And the reason for that is not that we are any smarter than them. That's not what we mean. They think it's impossible because they think the technology doesn't exist. It's a massive unlock when you realize that the technology is actually completely leapfrogged. I'll give you an example of that, right? So when you are behind a technology curve, so the technology change has already happened, you can see the mountain in front of you. When you're ahead of it already clearly, you can also see the valley behind you.
Yeah.
When you're standing on it,
You
very
don't-
hard to feel it. That's the problem. And the example I give again and again is, think of, say, an aerospace engineer designing a part of anything aerospace. It requires very high levels of understanding. You're doing multiple fields together, because aerospace is not one field. You have aerodynamics, you have structures coming together. And you have something that you intuitively develop as an intuition that you know what to do. These systems have gone past that, meaning I can read everything that is already published.
Yeah.
I can also read everything that you have done. I've also read everything that the company has ever done and give you an answer based on that. That's
So
when the
it's super
surprise
advanced,
happens.
yeah.
Super advanced. And
Yeah.
it's not just an answer, it's a synthesis. And when the conversation happens where we did this experiment with one of our customers, we said, okay, but give us your, not necessarily the top experts in your field, because they don't have the time. Give us somebody who you think are experts, but then they're building up to be the chief engineer of the company 10 years from now. Said, okay, 2 or 3 people came up. Said, okay, now pick a problem that you think is super hard. They picked one. Then based on that problem, I picked a problem that is much, much harder, because I'm from the field. I picked one. I said, you think, is this possible? They said, that's not at all possible. Impossible to do. And one of the problem was, you run a lot of simulations, you run experiments, you have to combine those things together to get an interpretation.
Right.
Usually that interpretation is a chief engineer's job. The engineer would come in and say, this is what I got.
Yeah.
You, Mr. Professor or Miss Professor, please tell me what to do. And the 3 people sitting there going, wait a minute, this is not a result that is there anywhere. It's
Sure.
not something that it read from a report. It synthesized it based on what I asked it to do. Then one of them was clever. They said, well, wait a minute. That's because you know what to ask it. True. But even I could not have come up with that explanation in
If
the
you
time
didn't have
period
that.
it took.
Yeah.
That's the unlock.
Yeah.
And it might seem self-fulfilling coming from an AI guy talking about AI that way, but before I was an AI guy, I'm an engineer at heart.
So you know that core problem.
Core
and-
problem.
Yeah.
And the problem is not just that it's a silver bullet that will solve all your problems. However, if used correctly, it leapfrogs significantly.
Sure, sure. I want to clearly get your view on what's going on overall when it comes to AI adoption, because you're clearly one company that is, at the enterprise end of AI. And the big question really is that there isn't enough enterprise adoption. And that at least some of the valuations that we're seeing, some of the money that's being pumped in is not justifiable given that enterprise adoption has been slow. Yours is very, very specific, but overall enterprise adoption. Where do you sit in this debate?
Got it. So this might also seem a bit self-fulfilling, right? So just
That's
that
all
we
right.
just come out of our Series B, we have our own valuation.
Yeah.
I feel the valuations of real companies actually are undervalued, not overvalued.
Yeah.
Okay, and the reason for that is this is not just about, oh, you're selling a piece of software and then give me value back for the piece of software. This is about fundamentally changing how companies are going to operate. Now, if any of us had to value Amazon in 1996, there's just no way for people to know how to value a company like that. The systemic shift is what is happening. That's one. I'll give you examples of that, right? Every company I talk to, every single enterprise, whether they're manufacturing, tech, deep tech, doesn't matter, whether 50-year-old company, brand new, like say 10-year-old company, their people are already using AI.
Yeah.
Personally, whether the company authorized it or not, it's the second question. The people are already using it. And once you start using it, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle.
Right.
That's one thing. But the second thing is their core operations almost always is not using anything AI. They're not even the best.
So that's the whole thing, that there's no enterprise, I mean, generic purpose enterprise adoption, but there's individual adoption.
Individual adoption, right?
Yeah.
But the individual adoption is not necessarily translating to company-wide major differentiation because it's not easy to get individuals to work together in a team with AI. That's one. It's not safe to do that yet. They're all kind of hiding and doing it themselves. And most customers today, like enterprise companies, would get a subscription for Copilot and say they got AI adoption.
Correct. And that's why the question that are the valuations justified? Are the investments justified? Because that large-scale enterprise adoption, yours is a very specialized one, but a large-scale general-purpose enterprise adoption is still very slow.
But the valuation is about the future, right? So valuation is about what could happen.
Right.
And this is a movement that if not it happens this month, it's going to happen next year, for sure. And we are seeing it so we are in one of the most regulated industries. We are in fact, one of the surprising things for me is manufacturing is adopting this faster than almost any other sector we are in, which is a big surprise for me. I would have said manufacturing would be a big laggard. That's number one. The other one is players like, say, energy. Like we talk to utilities. These are companies that haven't invested in technology for like 10 decades, are investing now.
Yeah.
Because they're seeing two things, right? They're seeing unprecedented growth in their consumption. Their current practices cannot catch up. That's one thing. But
so they've probably missed an entire cycle of tech adoption, but they're now getting into it because just the benefits are us. Right.
But the reality of the situation also is, think about from a enterprise leader. So every day all they hear is AI, AI, AI from their board, from their CEO, and every vendor comes out and says, I am also an AI company and I will do this for you. In fact, one of my customers actually said this to me. She's a chief AI officer in a large telecommunications company. She's like, Arun, I have this big problem. I know it cannot be solved by any one thing just like that. But every day I hear from 10 vendors saying they're going to solve this for me. Very hard problem for them to crack. And you asked me about the bubble, you asked me about, is this valuation meaningful? You are going to see a period where a lot of these companies will not exist, partly because they're selling just a dream. But on the other side of that, there are going to be companies that are going to be industry-making companies that almost nobody's heard of today. Those are the companies that are solving real problems.
So what you're saying, Arun, is that we're seeing this move in two parts. There are some that are overselling that dream and will likely go bust. And then there's some who you think could be even undervalued because they are truly solving genuine use cases, use problems, and could perhaps even be undervalued, that will actually see that once the sort of noise settles, once the so you'll see that bit of adjustment come through. So and that's part of the evolution of any technology that is going to happen. I want to definitely now get your views on India. I know you were there for the India AI Summit. It was great to host you as part of many of the SPF events as well. But what is it that you're picking up? Because again, a lot of noise there around the slow adoption, the slow innovation coming from India. And you're someone who understands both ends of the spectrum. What's your overall view on what's happening on AI in India?
I think I'm deeply passionate about India and everything that's going on, and also I've been very pleasantly surprised by how much positive momentum we got from the government, frankly.
Correct.
And over the last 5 years or so. In my opinion, and take this with a grain of salt or a bag of salt, the public sector has moved much faster than the private sector in India.
Yeah.
There's just not a lot of investment that's gone in. I'll almost say there's a lot of talk that went in from the private sector, but then that hasn't been followed up. And any one of the major houses in India could have had a major AI data center by today.
Right.
It doesn't exist. That's one
Right.
thing, right? And the reason I call out data centers is that's the economic driver for growth.
Sure.
And if you don't have that, you're kind of always dependent on somebody else. That's one thing, right? What Sarvam did was great because they at least put out a model that says, look, we will do it. We'll
Yeah.
continue to be on it and we'll push that, right? That also becomes almost a sense of, look, you have to innovate
Yeah.
in order for you to actually be taken seriously. And don't innovate on somebody else's terms, innovate on your terms.
Correct.
That's number one. And in India, the opportunity is even way bigger, right? So for me, like the heritage model effort that we're going after.
Yeah, I'd love to know more about that.
Absolutely. And we just went public with our partnership with Madras Sanskrit College as well. There, really the notion is you have sovereign models, that's one side of the story,
Sure.
which is required, it's needed for companies, like in the countries to actually have security, right? But I would consider that to be similar to having defense forces, right? Just as important is having a diplomatic corps. Your heritage model is like that, and India is uniquely positioned that way because there's more than one language that's over 5,000 years old, and still more or less practiced today and can be interpreted with scholars today.
Yeah.
Very few languages can say that. But my interest is slightly more than that, right? It's not just the cultural interest. Whether, irrespective of which school of thought, what is your political motivations, none of that, if you keep that aside,
Sure.
there's no question that there was technology that was far more advanced several thousand years ago that we don't have access to today.
Technology.
Technology.
Right.
Whether you're going and looking at structures that were built, metals that were there, like take the Qutub Minar's
Sure.
pillar, we kind of know what they are constituted of. We don't know how they were made.
So you're trying to unlock all of that.
Unlock that knowledge.
No, but explain to us.
Yes.
You're saying heritage. So this is a separate entity altogether.
Okay. So that's where the nuance comes in, right? So first of all, if you believe in the premise that there is a lot of technology to be unlocked, whether
Yeah.
it is agriculture, architecture, say
Medicine, yeah.
astronomy, or mathematics, any of those kinds of fields, any one of those sectors is a multi-$100 billion opportunity.
And all of that's sitting in India right now
Hidden,
because
lots.
hidden in
Sanskrit texts, in Tamil texts, in all sorts of different things, where you need to have an interpreter, right?
Yeah.
And we call that a heritage compiler. And the reason for that is, if you take a Sanskrit sloka, interpreting that depends on which school of thought you come in. It's not the same interpretation. So it's almost like you have to compile it to get meaning out of it. That's the compiler that we're building. And yes, large language model will be a critical piece of it. But before we rush into building a model, we're actually building the pieces of how do you understand the language, take the rules of the language, like for example, Panini's grammar, and encode that into the model.
right.
So the architecture is slightly different. It's a very large language model that we're building, but it's also building with the scholars, right? So scholars will interact with it. It's multimodal by design because these languages are spoken first, written second.
Now, this is a fascinating project because it's perhaps exactly what India needs.
Absolutely.
We're not just talking about preservation of heritage here. We're actually truly talking about use cases already. And so you're saying from drug discovery to architecture to studying
to engineering to medicine to actual metallurgy. My focus is this has to be financially sustainable in its own merit. Culture comes out as a
byproduct, yeah.
Right? And the second thing, of course, is I am deeply aware and acutely aware of the cultural sensitivities of a foreign company coming and trying to do this, and there are different interests that will come into play. So what we're trying to set up is an Indian entity
Sure.
that's independent of Articul8. It's a technology transfer program, almost like think of Maruti Suzuki or things of that nature, where yes, you need the technology from here, but there is a technology transfer agreement, and it's legitimately funded in India, and it's a separate entity, and it'll end up having ownership of all the IP it generates.
And how's the reception been so far around it?
Fantastic. In
Yeah.
fact, we've had to rush in because some of the news leaked a little bit, and but the reception has been phenomenal. Right?
And both from the government as well as from VCs as well
Absolutely.
as from the research
Absolutely.
institutions.
Absolutely.
So it's going to be an all-rounded effort then
Yes.
to build something like this. How exciting is it for you personally?
I mean,
Because
it's
on one hand, you're doing the real domain-specific
Yes.
stuff, but this is something close to your heart.
absolutely right, because this is we call Sanskrit our domain. So the
Right.
domain is a domain-specific model for Sanskrit, and it's also as somebody, a kid who almost never grew up with language, frankly, because I was always tech and always math and science. Language is always something that you had to do, and this is my way of paying back for all the time I didn't spend with language. But Sanskrit is something I learned for 4 years in KV, and that's about it, and never went back to it. And I, in the process of engaging in this project and figuring it out and the technology, know more about Sanskrit now than I ever did in school.
Right.
Right, so it's super exciting for me to be working on that. In fact, we have an intern from Cornell who's a dual major in linguistics and computer science,
Wow.
and he's working on this project with us.
And I think that's what makes AI fascinating,
Yes.
Arun, the fact that you're combining linguistic, studies along with computer science, doing things that otherwise would have been impossible to do, that is making this such a fascinating technology already. As we wrap this up, Arun, quick thoughts from you on, where your plans are headed, both for Articulate in general, and where do you see this going, and then for the Heritage Project.
Absolutely. So, I mean, some of the business numbers are public, but our next goal is really to get to our 100 million in ARR this year, and that's really what we are trying to push for. And this is all enterprise, right? So this
Right.
is not a consumer grade scaling, so it's a very different kind of scale engine.
But that also explains that there
Yes.
is real enterprise adoption,
right.
and that too very high and specialized
Absolutely.
enterprise adoption.
Absolutely.
And what are the numbers now looking like?
Yeah, so like we closed like last year with slightly over about 70 million in our total contract value. We crossed our 100 million in contract value already, and we are hoping to double that this year.
Amazing. So that's great. And you've had a great Series B as
Yes,
well.
yes.
And with the Heritage Project, we're going to hopefully see some funding coming in as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're looking for, and we're also looking at enterprise interest moving from, okay, let me just figure out what to do to production. And that's really what's been our bread and butter. This year has all been about production.
All right, here's wishing you all the best, Arun, with all things Articulate and exciting times clearly to be building right now. Wishing you the very best then.
Thank you so much, and
Thank
thanks for the
you.
opportunity.